This is Mr. Ivan. This topic is particularly troublesome for most of you, and most of you find yourself struggling in log and exponential graphs. Okay, so I try to make it as simplified for you. If you like this video, please like and share and subscribe to my channel. Okay, maybe before we start with the sketching of e to the power of x, let's understand two things. Okay, number one, we are going to sketch the graph of y equals to a to the power of x. Okay, so as long as you see x is a power, there's two kinds. Number one, if a is greater than 1, now for example y equals to 2 to the power of x. Okay, when you draw this graph, you must start very close to the axis. Okay, you must start very close to the negative x-axis, and then it will start to grow upwards. This is what I call the aeroplane taking off. Okay, so whenever you need to draw anything to the power of x, just remember it as the aeroplane taking off, and the y-intercept is 1. There's no x-intercept. Okay, because there is an asymptote, there's a dotted line here, there's an invisible dotted line here, such that the graph cannot cut and cannot pass. So there's no x-intercept. Okay, so this is for y equals to 2 to the power of x. So what happens if the a is lesser than 1? Over here, if a is lesser than 1, one example will be y equals to half to the power of x. Okay, you must be good in your indices. Half is 2 to the power of negative 1 with a power x here. Okay, and that will give you 2 to the power of negative x. So for 2 to the power of negative x, how does it look like? It is actually an aeroplane that is landing. So first, understand the transformation. You have a negative to the x now. From, look at here, this is y equals to 2 to the power of x. This is y equals to 2 to the power of negative x. The negative goes to the x. Means all the positive x becomes negative. Okay, and vice versa. So that's why there's a transformation here. There's a transformation in the graph. It is called a reflection. Okay, on the y-axis. Your y-axis is your mirror. If you have a negative to the x, so it will flip to the left. So if you want to remember it easily, it's called flip to the left. Or your graph flips to the left. Okay, so that is the difference between y equals to 2 to the power of x and y equals to half to the power of x. Okay, what happens if you need to draw y equals to 3 to the power of x in the same graph? Alright, so in exponential, when your base is bigger, the aeroplane will fly higher. That is after it passes through 1. Okay, so before 1, it is actually lower than 2 to the power of x. Can you see here? I'm drawing the green one. Okay, but it will not cut the x-axis. It just starts very close to x-axis, goes up and crosses here. They will intersect at this point, and once it crosses here, y equals to 3 to the power of x will actually fly higher. Okay, so these are your basic graphs you have to know at the back of your head first before we go on to sketch e to the power of x. Okay, now we come to here. When you want to sketch a graph, make sure you use a ruler and pencil to draw your axis and label this as y and label this as x. Okay, e. Actually, e is a constant. Many of you cannot come to terms that e is actually e to the power of 1. In your calculator, e to the power 1 will be 2.71 something. It is actually a constant. Now, at this stage, maybe you do not know why the use of e. When you go to JC and higher level, you will understand more about the natural log. Okay, now for now, just accept it that e is a constant of 2.71. So 2.71 is greater than 1. Okay, so for e to the power of x is the same as, it has the same shape as 2 to the power of x. Start very close to the negative x-axis here, and then aeroplane take off upwards. Label this as 1, and then label your graph y equals to e to the power of x. Okay, when you want to draw y equals to e to the power of negative x, remember just now I said that when you draw when the negative goes to the x, it is a reflection along the y-axis. It is a reflection along the y-axis. So we flip the graph to the left. Aeroplane landing, okay, is what I call it as. and then label this as 1. Please go very close to the axis. Now there are some students that draw it like that, okay, sloppily. This is not acceptable. Okay, it goes very close to the x-axis as the plane length. Okay, so this is for y equals to e to the power of x, aeroplane taking off, and y equals to e to the power of negative x. Okay, so let's say we want to transform it further. Okay, we need to draw a y equals to a negative in front of the e. Okay, so there's a difference. When it is a negative in front of the x, the transformation is a reflection on the y-axis. Okay, because all the positive x becomes the negative x. But when there's a negative in front, okay, from that graph to this graph is a reflection, okay, on the x-axis. Basically, all the positive y becomes the negative y. Okay, all the positive y becomes the negative y. What is the difference that it will make? It will cause the graph to flip downwards. Okay, it will cause the graph to flip downwards. You see, even when I draw the graph, I also use a ruler, okay, to make sure that the line axes are straight. Label your origin. Okay, so now for e to the power of x is an aeroplane landing. Now I flip downwards. How does it look like? It will start at the bottom. It will go again very close to the x-axis. You must go very close, but it will not cut. You will not cut. It will not touch. Actually, okay, just make sure it goes very close to the axis. And in this case, it's a negative 1. So you see from this diagram here, y equals to e to the power of negative x. I reflect on the x-axis because all the positive y has changed to the negative y, and that is my y equals to negative e to the power of negative x. Okay, of course not all the time you will need to reflect twice. In this case, I reflected on the y-axis, then I reflect on the x-axis. That's because I'm drawing y equals to e to the power of, y equals to negative e to the power of negative x. If you want to draw y equals to negative e to the power of x, or any negative a to the power of x, the same thing applies. Okay, you have to know that e to the power of x is an aeroplane taking off. Okay, after the aeroplane takes off, I need to reflect it on the x-axis because all the negative y have changed to the positive y already. Okay, so this is y and this is x. The graph will look like this. Very close to start very close to the x-axis and then goes downwards. Okay, label this as negative 1, and this is y equals to negative e to the power of x, or negative any a to the power of x for that matter, because the original graph looks like this. Okay, this is y equals to e to the power of x. So there is a reflection on the x-axis. All the positive y has become a negative y, and for the transformation, it is actually called flip downwards. Okay, so if you have a negative in front, you flip downwards. If you have a negative to the x, you flip to the left. Okay, these are the two basic transformations you need to know. Okay, now next, from this y equals to e to the power of negative x, if I introduce a, okay, what does this mean? That means I add a units. Now it could be a minus, it could be a plus, but in this case, if I add a units, means the whole graph has moved up by a units. How does the graph looks like when it moves up by a units? Okay, first and foremost, whenever there's a constant there, okay, that is your new dotted line, or if you understand what's asymptote, that is called your new asymptote. Okay, so I draw an axis again. I label this as x, label this as y. Y equals to a. Draw a dotted line first. Okay, actually the dotted line you have to use a ruler, and label this as y equals to big A. Okay, the whole graph will move up by a units. Means to say that now your curve will come to here and then go very close to the dotted line. Okay, because previously over here on the left side, can you see it goes very close to this line? This line is called y equals to 0. The dotted line actually is here. Okay, it's called y equals to 0. Now, if you add a, that means the dotted line have moved up by a units. The dotted line now exists at y equals to a. Actually, very simply, when you draw a sketch, you have to find out what is your y-intercept. Means you sub x equals to 0, okay, and your x-intercept. You need to sub y equals to 0 to find out what are these two values. Then you will be able to see that it tends towards a dotted line, okay, at y equals to a. We will look at an example in a while. So these are all the graphs that you need to understand for an exponential graph. There is either aeroplane taking off or either aeroplane landing. Then there are three forms of transformation. Either there's a negative to the x, you will flip to the left. If there's a negative in front, you will flip downwards. And if you have a constant in front, you need to move the whole graph upwards, and there is a new dotted line or asymptote at y equals to a.